stood stiffly, her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her veil, her gaze fixed on Jungkook, who stood by the window engrossed in a call. His voice was calm, his tone clipped as he discussed some business deals. His demeanor was, as usual, poised and sharp. When he finally ended the call and slipped his phone into his pocket, Wine closed the distance between them and leaned forward, her heart racing. Her face hovered inches from his, her breath mingling with his. Jungkook froze, his brows knitting together. "What are you doing? Move away." His deep voice carried a hint of suspicion as he instinctively moved away. Wine straightened, clapping her hands loudly. "See, I knew it. You're not blind. You have been fooling everyone." Jungkook nodded, his sharp eyes narrowing. "Do you even know what you're talking about?" "Yes, how else would you know I was so close to you unless you could see?" She shot back, standing her ground. A smile tugged at the corner of his lips, sending a ripple of heat down her spine. "You were so close, I could feel your breath on my face," he replied smoothly, his tone low and dizzy. Wine's confidence faltered. She blinked rapidly, her cheeks heating up as the implication of his words sank in. Jungkook noticed her silence, his mouth widening. "What? No clever comeback?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. Feeling cornered, she abruptly turned around. "I'm going to change," she muttered, grabbing the neatly folded nightwear from the side table. Jungkook chuckled as he heard the washroom door close. When she returned, now dressed in casual clothes, she found Jungkook standing near the dresser, his hands slightly grazing the surface as he looked around the room. "Do you need something?" she asked, her voice hesitant. He turned his head to the direction of her voice and nodded. "I need to change. Come, I'll help you to the washroom." She moved close to him and grabbed his arm. He let her lead him to the bathroom, though the amused glint in his eyes didn't escape her notice. When they reached the door, Wine hesitated, her gaze flickering to his. "Do you need help changing?" she asked, twisting her fingers. Jungkook's eyes widened slightly and a faint flush spread across his face. "What? No," he said, his voice an octave higher than usual. Wine caught his reaction and smiled, leaning slightly closer. "Your face is all right, Jungkook. Are you embarrassed or shy?" "Of course not," he shot back, but his tone betrayed him. She grinned, clearly enjoying his discomfort. "Don't worry. I'll close my eyes. See? Problem solved." She covered her eyes with her hands, peeking through her fingers just enough to see his reaction. Jungkook crossed his arms, his lips curling into a mocking smile. "And what's the difference? If you're closing your eyes, then we would both be blind. You're no help." Wine pouted, dropping her hands. "Don't pout." She narrowed her eyes and moved close to him. "You're fooling us. How would you know I pouted?" she suspiciously said, waving her hand in front of his eyes. "I wish I could see," he said in a low tone. Wine patted his bare chest. "All right, don't make me feel bad." He grabbed her hand. "Are you trying to take advantage of me?" She cleared her throat, realizing what she just did. "Don't flatter yourself." She pulled away her hand. "Who leaves phone button open? Button it up. I can't live with a pervert. Anyway, I'm leaving," she said, taking a step back. Jungkook chuckled. "But you might want to be careful, John. You never know when I might catch you slipping," she added with a sly smile before turning around. He rolled his eyes, though a small smile lingered on his lips as she walked away, her laughter echoing softly. He ran a hand through his hair as he closed the door. Time skip. It's going to be a month since their wedding, and Jungkook is busy with his rehabilitation. Mr. John sent him away so that he would recover faster, while Wine hadn't seen him. Her brother, Zeke, comes to meet her every day. The Wine sat on the couch, clutching her stomach as laughter spilled out of her. Zeke grinned, clearly pleased with the effect of his corny dad joke. "I can't believe you said that with a straight face," she gasped, wiping away tears of laughter. "I have a gift," Zeke replied with mock seriousness, leaning back and crossing his arms like a epitome of cool. The warmth of their moment shattered when the door opened abruptly, revealing Jungkook. The room instantly tensed, laughter dissipating as Zeke's expression turned stone, mirroring the cold glare Jungkook directed at him. "Didn't realize I was walking into a comedy club," Jungkook muttered, his voice laced with disdain. Zeke stood, his height matching Jungkook's as the air between them grew thick with hostility. One gulped, getting on her feet with a worried expression. They were both now face to face. Didn't realize you'd be back unannounced. Rehabilitation must be going great if you're here early. Not that it's your concern. Their gazes bored into each other's souls. Everything about my sister is my concern. Zeke retorted, his jaw tightening. One's heart sank as the tension escalated, their voices rising. You think you can just waltz in here, acting like you are the protector. Jungkook snapped, his voice sharper now. She doesn't need you babysitting her, she's my wife. Your wife. Zeke scoffed bitterly, stepping closer. You mean the girl you married out of convenience? Don't act like you suddenly care. How about you married off your sister just for the sake of your business? Is her worth that little for you? Zeke grabbed his collar, glaring at him with bloodshot eyes. Your father was the one who bugged my sister to marry you. Do you think you're worth her? I would have long gotten her married to Shen. Jung clenched his jaw, pushing him and punching him in the face. Wan gasped, her hands flying to cover her mouth. Mention Shen again, I'll make sure you don't go out from here alive, he growled. Zeke smiled and kicked him in the stomach. Jungkook stumbled backward and Zeke strode toward him. Stop it. Wan's voice cut through their argument, her small figure stepping between them with teary eyes. Please stop, Zeke. Zeke softened, seeing her teary eyes, and glared at Jungkook. Divorce her this instant. Jungkook stepped toward him, but Wan pushed against his chest and stood in front of Zeke, spreading her arms and shaking her head. Jungkook sighed, running his fingers through his hair. Don't stop him, Wan. Let me see what he's capable of. Wan turned to face Zeke. Zeke, please stop it. I don't want this. Zeke sighed in defeat, seeing her tears spill over as he pulled her into his embrace. He parted his lips to speak, but Jungkook's hand shot out, gripping her arm and pulling her away from Zeke. The sudden movement caused her to stumble into his chest, her hands instinctively resting against his firm torso to steady herself. Jungkook's dark eyes bored into hers, a mixture of anger and something she couldn't quite place, swirling in their depths. Stay away from him, he warned, his voice low but commanding. Wan blinked, utterly dumbfounded. He's my brother, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Stop with your stupid warning, don't even think to threaten my sister. Zeke stepped forward, his fists clenched, but Wan quickly turned to him, her free hand pressed against his chest. Zeke, please go for now, we'll talk later, okay? Jungkook took her hand that was pressed on Zeke's chest and pressed it against his own chest. Zeke hesitated, his eyes darting between her fleeting expression and Jungkook's steely gaze. With a sigh, he nodded, begrudgingly brushing past Jungkook, not forgetting to bump into his shoulder as he left. The door clicked shut, leaving Wan and Jungkook alone in the thick silence. She looked up at him, her heart pounding from both the tension and the proximity. He still held her gaze as if he wanted to capture her in his heart through his eyes. You didn't have to do that, she said softly, her voice breaking the quiet. He's always meddling, Jungkook replied, his tone less sharp but still defensive. Wan glared at him furiously. He's my brother, he worries about me, you had no right to hit him. He came as a guest, that's not how a guest is treated. Tears glistened in her eyes, Jungkook's face softened as he studied her face. Wan leaned forward and sank her teeth in his neck. Jungkook grabbed her hair, gently trying to break out. Damn, you're such a wildcat, he gasped, shutting his eyes tightly. Wan moved away after venting out her anger. Jungkook rubbed his neck, his face grimaced in pain. I love my brother, and if you hurt him, it will hurt me as well, so I returned the pain. She snapped, wiping her nose with her sleeve, and walked to the bedroom. Jungkook followed her as soon as he entered the room. Wan turned sharply to him and rolled up her sleeves. Jungkook stopped in his tracks and blinked several times, wondering what she was up to. I need an explanation, John. Why would you say something like, stay away from him? She imitated him. Jungkook folded his arms, leaning casually against the wall. Because you're my wife. He stated matter-of-factly, his tone leaving no room for argument. And you won't hug any other man, especially not Zeke. Why raised a brow, her lips twitching in amusement. But then something clicked in her mind and her eyes widened slightly. Wait a second, she said, her voice dripping with curiosity. You can finally see, can't you? Jungkook gave a slow, almost smug nod. Why narrowed her eyes, stepping closer to him, her gaze fixed on his as if examining him for proof. Let me see, she mused, leaning in and peering into his dark eyes. His hands moved to her waist instinctively, holding her gently but firmly in place. What are you doing? He asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and fond exploration. Just checking, why teased her grin behind me. Making sure you're not pulling another trick on me. Jungkook sighed dramatically, his voice dropping into a soft complaint. You didn't come to see me. Wine blinked, taken aback by the sudden shift in his tone. Then she grinned, tilting her head as if she just unraveled a mystery. Sissy, I already said you like me. She declared triumphantly, a playful glint in her eyes. I have been saying this since high school, but you wouldn't believe me. She flipped her hair dramatically, striking a mock pose. Jungkook stared at her for a long moment, his gaze unreadable. Then, without warning, he leaned forward and kissed her, his lips capturing hers in a way that left her breathless. Wine's eyes widened in shock before she pulled back, glaring at him. What the hell, Jungkook? She huffed, her cheeks flushing. He grinned, utterly unapologetic. What? That was supposed to be the wedding kiss, wasn't it? She cleared her throat, turning away to hide her blush. Anyway, she muttered, desperate to change the subject. Your father didn't let me visit you because he thought the enemies might attack me if I went out of this house. Jungkook rolled his eyes dramatically, crossing his arms. The enemy already attacked this house, he said with mock indignation. Wine frowned in confusion. What are you talking about? Your brother? He deadpanned, his tone dripping with sarcasm. The realization made her laugh, but she quickly hid it by tugging at his hair hard. Jungkook winced, groaning in protest as he let her go. You're such a drama king, she said, sticking her tongue out at him before turning and heading towards the door. Jungkook stood there for a moment, rubbing the spot where she had yanked his hair. His phone buzzed and he sighed, pulling it out to answer the call. At night, Wine was sprawled on the couch, happily munching on her snacks while the television flickered with the late-night drama. Jungkook scooted close to her, their shoulders brushing. Wine turned her head in his direction. Why are you still here? Go and sleep. Jungkook shrugged his shoulders and placed his head on her shoulder, taking her off guard. Hey, what are you doing? He hushed her. Watch quietly, this is horror. He snuggled further into her and said with timid expression, while laughed, shaking her head. As if you have seen this is not horror. She kept munching on her snacks. Seems like you are waiting for something or someone. You have been glancing at the clock restlessly. She muttered thoughtfully. Jungkook smiled on her, taking her hand. I'm waiting for someone. Leave my hand. She snapped at him, pulling away her hand. Get a pillow for yourself. Move away from my shoulder. You might transfer your lies to me. She said furiously and pushed away his head. Jungkook stared at her with a gape. The sudden change in her behavior surprised him. He opened his mouth to speak, but the doorbell rang. Your someone is here, she said with a mock smile. Jungkook leaned his face to her. Are you jealous? She blinked, composing herself, and shook her head. He flicked her forehead. I'm not expecting anyone that to this late at night. The doorbell rang again. Jungkook clenched his jaw. Who the hell is it? He muttered and stood. Finish the drama fast, I want to sleep. Enough of it, he said before going to open the door. Wine looked around. Does that mean he was waiting for me? She then slapped her head. I'm such a fool, I got angry at him for no reason. She scratched her neck and whispered with a smile. The peace of moment was interrupted when she heard a feminine voice, soft and quiet, whining behind her. Turning her head, she saw Matty stepping into the living room, following closely behind Jungkook, who had a poker face. But as soon as his eyes met Wine's, he smiled, his face lit, which didn't go unnoticed by Matty. Matty's here to see you. Wine's brows furrowed, her glare could have melted steel. Jungkook, however, only shrugged and gave her a sheepish smile. No, Jungkook, Jungkook interrupted her. You're here to meet me, and I and mine are no different people. We are one, inseparable. He spoke his eyes fixed on Wine and leaned in close to her. Wine's breath hissed his warm breath, sending a shiver down her spine. Jungkook patted her cheek with a smile. I'll send some snacks over for you. Mighty's eyes were locked on Jungkook and his every gesture. Wait, Jungkook, what's that mark on your neck? She asked sharply, her gaze narrowing. Jungkook didn't miss the beat, grinning slyly as he replied, oh, that my wild cat to mark her territory. She squawked wildly in bedsheet. Before he could finish, one slapped her hand over his mouth, her cheeks filling with embarrassment. She glared daggers at him for the outright lie. Stop it. She hissed under her breath. Mighty clenched her jaw, her fingers turning into fists. Jungkook, clearly amused, pulled Wine's hand away with ease. Wine buttoned up his shirt and he walked off with a hearty laugh, not forgetting to throw a wink in her direction. Wine turned back to Mighty, forcing a polite smile. Please have a seat, she said, gesturing to the couch, but Mighty ignored the gesture, stepping closer with her head held high and an air of arrogance. I see you're still pretending to fit into his world. Mighty began, her voice dripping with condescension. Wine raised her brow, her polite smile faltered. Excuse me. It's pathetic, really. This is just a marriage of convenience, which means you basically sold yourself for your family's business. Wine's eyes stung with tears. Jungkook deserves someone who matches his status, not some sensitive little girl who can't handle a few words of truth. Mighty pointed at her teary eyes. Wine clenched her jaw and her temper flared before the hurt could take hold. She grabbed a fistful of Mighty's hair, pulled it harshly and snapped back. Say that again, I dare you. Mighty here trying to pray Wine's hand away, but Wine wasn't backing down. Leave me, Wine, you're crazy. Mighty cried while Wine's grip tightened. You're crazy, bloody psycho bitch. Jungkook rushed in. What's going on here? Jungkook, help me. Jungkook ignored her and looked at Wine. She insulted me in my own home. Wine muttered through gritted teeth. You glared at Mighty with cold intensity. Wine let go of her. Mighty rubbed her hair while crying and opened her mouth to speak, but Jungkook cut her off. Don't even try to frame Wine. I know exactly how Wine is, and I also know what you're like. Get out of my house before I lose my temper, he said in a low and dangerous voice. Mighty's face twisted in anger, but she stormed out, defeated, slamming the door behind. Jungkook turned to Wine, taking her hands gently in his. Are you okay? He asked softly. Wine snapped at him, her voice sharp. You went told her the reason behind our marriage. That was between us. It's not like I begged you to marry me. Your father had been bugging me over and over to think about this proposal, but I never told anyone that. Tears spilled down her eyes. Jungkook's heart clenched painfully at the sight of her tears. She says I basically sold myself. Do you hold that much grudge against our family? You couldn't even keep it a secret. Before he could respond, she leaned forward and sank her teeth into his neck. Jungkook let out a low groan, his body tensing in surprise. She didn't move away until she vented out all her anger. Jungkook's face contorted in pain as he rubbed the spot. Wine sniffed, wiping her face with her sleeve. I didn't say her anything. He stepped forward, cupping her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears as he held her close. Don't let her words get to you. She deliberately wanted to hurt you. I haven't met her since 9 years. Today is the first time she has come here, that too because she has heard about our marriage. I thought she has changed. I'm sorry. I'm staring at him dumbfounded. You're trying to trick me. I swear I'm not lying. You can ask my parents, friends, anyone, trust me. She bit her lips, nursing the sincerity in his words. Should I trust you? Yes. Can't you trust me a bit? She gulped and let out a deep breath. I'm sorry, she mumbled, rubbing her thumb on the mark she left. It's our reception soon and you have got a mark. Such a wildcat, he hissed. Looks like he marked your territory again. He teased Wine's smile, just slightly rolling her eyes. Hold these 4 buttons open anyway, it's your fault. Jungkook laughed. This mark isn't on my chest, it's on my neck. Wine shook her head and walked to the bedroom. Don't walk away, Wine. I'm not done yet. He followed her to the bedroom. Wine climbed on the bed. But I'm done and I want to sleep. She laid and covered herself in the comforter. Jungkook climbed beside her. You have vented out your anger and now you're sleeping peacefully, satisfied. He murmured. She passed him a smile. Switch off the lights. Jungkook sighed, switching off the lights and lying beside her. After a moment, He draped his arm around her waist and pulled her into his embrace, burying his face in her neck. This is not a marriage of convenience. It was decided that I'll divorce you after a year, but I will not. You're mine now, and no one can snatch you from me because I forced Dad to send the proposal to you, he whispered. Wayne's heart hammered against her chest at his words and the way his lips touched the aid of her neck. She hummed with a smile, placing her hand on his. Reception day. The grand hall buzzed with laughter and music, lights twinkling as guests mingled and celebrated. Wayne stood by the corner with her brother Zeke, who was animatedly recounting Jungkook's pre-Q apology to him. You should have seen his face, Zeke said, barely containing his laughter. It was like someone forced him to swallow nails. Priceless. Wayne glared at him, swatting his arm. Don't make fun of my husband, she cheered, though her heart swelled with pride. Jungkook had apologized for her. Defensive already, Zeke teased, leaning closer. Your husband is a grump with an ego the size of this hall. Zeke. Wayne warned, her eyes narrowing. Zeke only grinned and continued. I'm just saying he probably rehearsed that apology 100 times. Before he could finish, Wayne grabbed his arm and sunk her teeth into it, making him yelp in pain. Why, you vampire? Zeke groaned, clutching his arm. Serves you right, Wayne snapped, glaring at him. Jungkook, who had been approaching, quickly stepped in, pulling Wayne into his arms and cradled her protectively. His voice was low and possessive as he said, You can't go around biting other people, Wayne. That's only allowed with me. Zeke burst into laughter, mocking Jungkook with a sly grin. Possessive army? Jungkook snapped back, his eyes narrowing. Say one more word and you'll find out exactly how possessive I can get. Without another word, Jungkook grabbed Wayne's hand and began dragging her away, leaving Zeke shaking his head with a fond smile as he watched them go. Once they were alone in a quieter corner, Wayne turned to Jungkook, clicking her tongue as she began buttoning up his shirt. Honestly, Jungkook, don't know to whom you are trying to show off with this. Jungkook chuckled, his hands sliding around her waist. Why would I show off to anyone else when I have already got this big girl here? Wayne rolled her eyes but couldn't stop the blush creeping up her cheeks. Don't be cheesy. He pulled her close, their bodies pressed against each other. What, you are the one fussing over my buttons? She ignored his remark and glanced over her shoulder, her expression soaring slightly. Why is Matty here? I don't like her presence. Jungkook sighed, gently brushing a strand of hair away from her face. Her father and mine are good friends. Dad must have invited them, but don't worry, Matty won't try anything. After what happened last time, I made sure she got the message loud and clear. Wayne nodded, though her lips still formed a slight pout. If you feel anything bad, you must tell me. Jungkook leaned in and pecked her pouty lips. Wayne blinked, looking around. No one could ever take your place, you know that, right? He whispered over her lips. Before she could reply, Jungkook's mom appeared, taking Wayne's hand with a bright smile. Sorry for interrupting your moment, but Wayne, come, I want to introduce you to some friends. Mom, no one would let me have my wife. He whined. Wayne giggled as Mrs. John waved her hand. Jungkook groaned, running a hand through his hair. Wayne looked at him apologetically as she was whisked away. The whole afternoon went on smoothly, but Matty's presence had cast a shadow over the afternoon, leaving Wayne uneasy. She felt the weight of the day press down on her. The hall was almost empty now, and Wayne excused herself to the washroom. As she exited the washroom, her thoughts tangled in her mind. She didn't notice Matty standing just a few feet away until she spoke. Well, look who's here. Matty sneered, crossing her arms. Wayne sighed, choosing to ignore her. She walked past her without a word, but Matty wasn't having it. What's the matter? Too scared to talk? Haven't forgotten what you did last time. You need to learn your place. Wayne stopped her, back stiffening. Without turning, she said, This is meaningless. I don't have time for this, Matty. She continued, walking her gown, trailing behind her when Matty's footsteps grew louder. Before Wayne could react, Matty shoved her from behind. A gasp escaped Wayne as she fell forward, her foot catching on the table that held a flower vase and decorative showcase items. The table tipped over with a loud crash, and Wayne landed hard on the floor, the sharp edge grazing her forehead. Pain seared through her as she felt warm blood trickling down her temple. Matty froze, her face paling as she saw the blood. Damn it, Matty muttered before turning on her heel and running away. While lay there struggling to stay conscious, her vision blurred as dizziness took over. Hands seemed to stretch endlessly, the silence deafening until she heard hurried footsteps. Mine, Jungkook's voice was filled with panic. He knelt beside her, cradling her head gently in his arms. Mine, look at me, keep your eyes open. He pleaded, his voice breaking as he wiped the blood from her face with trembling hands. She blinked slowly, her vision hazy as she focused on his worried expression. Without resting another second, he slipped an arm under her knees and under her back, lifting her effortlessly. Time skipped. Wine's eyelids fluttered open and she found herself surrounded by concerned faces. Her parents, her in-laws, and Jungkook who sat right beside her, his eyes dark with worry. "Wine, you're awake?" her mother asked. "Are you okay, Wine?" Mrs. John asked wearily as she helped her sit up gently and adjusted the pillow behind her. "I'm fine," she whispered, her gaze scanning the room. She noticed the absence of her brother Zeke, but chose not to mention it. "How did this happen?" Mr. John asked, only his eyes narrowing. Jungkook interjected immediately. "She shouldn't talk much, she's hurt." His tone was protective, almost growling. Her father chuckled softly. "It's her forehead that's hurt, not her mouth." The room erupted in light laughter. Jungkook's expression, however, remained grim, which Wine noticed immediately as he took her hand in his. "We'll leave you two alone. This giant guy was on the verge of crying when you were in hospital, Wine. You should have seen his face." Mr. John patted Jungkook on the back. Wine smiled while Jungkook immediately placed his palm on her mouth. "Don't smile, your forehead will hurt." Wine chuckled, removing his hand. "It wouldn't." Mr. John ushered everyone out of the room as the door closed. Jungkook's shoulders relaxed slightly. "You must lie back. You need rest," he said softly. Wine placed her palm on his cheek, staring at his seemingly exhausted face. "I'm fine." He held her hand and kissed her palm, placing it on his chest. She felt his heart beat under her palm. "How did this happen?" "Maggie pushed me." Jungkook's jaw tightened, his eyes darkening with fury. "I'll make sure she regrets ever crossing you," he said through gritted teeth. He leaned forward, pressing a soft kiss to her bandaged forehead, his lips lingering as if to erase her pain. "Do you want anything?" "No, I don't need anything." She shook her head. "Alright, you need to rest. The stitches will hurt if you talk too much," he murmured, stroking her bandaged head. Wine pouted. "I'm not even..." Before she could finish, the door burst open. Zeke stormed in, his expression thunderous. "John," he growled, grabbing Jungkook by the collar and throwing a punch at his jaw. "Zeke," Wine gasped, her voice trembling with shock as Jungkook stumbled to the floor. Jungkook growled, standing up quickly. "What the hell are you doing? You're playing this act of a loving husband while my sister gets hurt because of you." Zeke growled, throwing another punch. "Divorce her." Jungkook dodged this time, his eyes blazing. "Over my dead body." He snarled before landing a solid punch on Zeke's jaw. Zeke stopped it. Wine cried, tears streaming down her face. Her broken voice finally reached Jungkook, who froze immediately, his fist still clenched. But Zeke wasn't done. His rage blinded him as he moved to strike again, only for Wine to rush to the door. "Mom, Dad, please come here," she yelled. Soon both their parents arrived. "Zeke, what the hell are you doing?" Mr. Park stepped forward, grabbing his son by the arm and yanking him back. "Dad, this bust." Mr. Park slapped him, cutting him off. "That's your brother-in-law. Show some respect. At least look at your sister." Zeke glanced at Wine, whose face was drenched with tears, while Mrs. John held her. Mrs. Park helped Jungkook and sat him on the bed. "It's okay. Kids these days are hot-headed. It's not a big deal." Mr. John patted Zeke's shoulder and said with a smile. Zeke felt embarrassed. "I'm so sorry, dear." Mrs. Park quickly grabbed first aid. Jungkook shook his head. "You did nothing." Jungkook shifted his gaze to Wine. "Wine, come here." Jungkook's gaze softened at her trembling form. She approached him, sat beside him, resting her head on his shoulder as he wrapped his arm around her gently. Zeke stepped toward her, but Wine buried her face in Jungkook's neck, refusing to look at him. Mr. John Park let him out. "Mom, be gentle," she said as Mrs. Park dabbed the medicine over the bruise on Jungkook's face. Mrs. John chuckled. "Don't be afraid, Wine, you're Mafia's wife. Jungkook is fine. These little injuries do nothing to him." Soon Mrs. Park and John left the room. "I'm sorry for..." He placed his index finger on her lips and cupped her face, gently tilting her head upward to meet her gaze. "Zeke should be the one apologizing, not you." She nodded, sniffing and wiping her face with her sleeve. "Come on, you need to sleep now." He tucked her in the bed. "Stay here, I'll go and change." He leaned towards her, tugging the strand of hair behind her ear. He passed her a small smile before disappearing to the washroom. When he returned, he slid into the bed beside her. She instinctively rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. He gently wrapped his arms around her, making sure not hurt her stitches. "I love you, Wine. I lost it when Zeke told me to divorce you." She looked up at him, her eyes wide with emotion. "I know you love me." He jiggled his gaze softly. "Of course you know, since high school. I'll not leave you no matter what." Wine giggled, her cheeks warming as she propped on her elbows. He leaned, capturing her lips in a gentle kiss. As they pulled apart, he cradled her closer, his fingers stroking her hair until her breathing grew steady. Time skipped. Wine sat at her desk, immersed in her work, when the sound of the door opening pulled her attention. She looked up, startled to see Zeke standing in the doorway with his best friend Shen. "Shen, you're back," she exclaimed, standing up in surprise. Shen gave a small nod and a crooked smile. "Yeah, I'm back." Zeke strolled to the couch and plopped down casually. Wine stepped around the desk, moving towards Shen, but as she reached them, the door opened again. Jacob entered, his eyes narrowing slightly as he took in the scene. Without a word, he strode toward Wine and wrapped his arms around her in a protective embrace, catching everyone off guard. "Jacob," she murmured, startled. Zeke lowered his head, hiding a knowing smile, while Shen gawked at them, dumbfounded. Jacob ignored their reactions, pressing a soft kiss to Wine's healed forehead before lifting her effortlessly, wrapping her legs around his waist like she weighed nothing. "Jacob," she squeaked, her cheeks flushing. He walked to the chair and sat down with her still in his arms, settling her securely on his lap. Wine turned an even deeper shade of red, flustered by the intimate display in front of her brother and his friend. Jungkook's gaze shifted to Shin, his smile polite but laced with a warning. "Have a seat," he said curtly, gesturing to the chairs. Zeke cleared his throat and stood, sensing the tension. "Actually, we have some work to get to," he said, tugging Shin's sleeve. "Good, you can leave then," he said bluntly, but then smiled slyly. "Wine, do you know how your brother apologized to me? Trust me, I thought he would cry if I didn't forgive him. You should have seen his face." Jung deliberately said in a raised voice. As they stepped out, Shen turned to Zeke. "I can't believe my eyes and ears. Did you really get your sister married to your rival? And you apologized to him? This is unbelievable." Zeke smiled, tugging his hands in his pockets. "I thought you would let me marry Wine." "I know, this bastard is perfect for Wine. His feelings haven't changed since high school. I wanted someone for my sister who would treat her like a child, who wouldn't get annoyed when she throws a tantrum." Zeke placed his hand on Shen's shoulder. "I had already told you, you like Wine now because you think she has matured, but no, she's the same Wine whom you thought was annoying." He swayed his shoulder at the last sentence. Shen nodded in understanding. Meanwhile, Wine slapped Jungkook's shoulder lightly. "What was that?" she demanded, though her voice carried no real anger. He shrugged nonchalantly, his arms standing around her. "Just protecting my wife." She shook her head, exasperated, and tried to stand, but he stopped her, putting his face against her chest. His arms encircled her waist, holding her close. "Jungkook," she murmured softly, her fingers tangling in his hair as she began to stroke it gently. "Are you tired?" He nodded, his face still pressed against her. "Exhausted much?" he mumbled after a moment. He pulled away, his dark eyes meeting hers. "By the way, Matey now has 6 stitches on her forehead," Wine gasped. "Did you hit her?" He smiled, shaking his head. "No, I had someone else handle it." She laughed outright, disbelieving laugh, shaking her head. "I thought she was your friend." He cupped her fist gently. "She was until she tried to frame you back then. Once I realized she was hostile toward you, I ended up with her. I thought she was my friend, but she liked me and couldn't accept the fact that I like you, not her." He let out a sigh. "I couldn't even confess to you because you hated me." She placed her hands over his, holding his gaze. "It's true I didn't like you much in high school, but since I have seen you as my husband, I have felt differently. Call it craziness or love, I don't know, but it's there." He smiled, kissing her lips. She moved back. "Why were you and Zeke rivals anyway?" He ran a hand through his hair. "I have been stealing his ideas, his work and everything. I used to take credits and win. It has been happening since childhood to high school, and it was quite serious." Wine nodded and got out of his grip, standing. "Don't try to distract me and run away." He grabbed her by the waist and sat her on the desk, standing between her legs. He captured her mouth in a kiss that left her breathless. Her hands gripped his shoulders as he deepened the kiss, pouring all his emotions into it. pulled apart, breathless. Jungkook brought his lips to her ear, blowing and kissing. "I need to work," she barely whispered as he laid her ear low. "How about planning some time for me?" His warm breath brushed against her ear and side of her neck. Wine's cheeks flushed. "I see you every day, you don't need to be scheduled." He chuckled, the sound deep and rich. "But I want to be a priority." He pinned her gently on the desk, his arms caging her. "Jungkook," she exclaimed, her face turning crimson. "What?" He asked innocently, though the mistakes glint in his eyes betrayed him. "Am I not allowed to spend time with my wife?" She screamed beneath him, but his firm grip on her wrist kept her in place. His face was so close that she could feel the warmth radiating off him. "You're impossible," she muttered, averting her gaze, "and you're irresistible." He countered, his voice dropping lower. He leaned in, brushing his lips lightly against hers before pulling back. A playful smirk on his face. Wang glared at him flustered. "Stop kissing me," she mumbled, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would I stop? When you look so adorable when you're flustered." He teased, leaning down, began to kiss the tip of her nose. Wang pouted her lips, forming a small pout that only made him chuckle more. He released her wrist, his hands moving to cradle her face gently, his thumb pressed against her cheek as he gazed into her eyes, his expression softening. "I can't help it. I love seeing you like this, completely mine," he murmured. Her breath edged at his words and she felt her heart flutter. "You're too much," she whispered, but her hands moved to rest on his chest, her fingers clutching his shirt. "Too much," he echoed, tilting his head. "Should I stop then?" She hesitated for a moment before shaking her head, her voice barely audible. "No." Jacob smiled, his lips brushing against hers in a kiss that was both tender and passionate. His hands round on her waist, pulling her closer as their lips moved in sync. Time seemed to stand still as he poured every ounce of love he felt for her into the kiss. "Let's go home and let me spoil you tonight, Mrs. John." He whispered over her lips and lifted her in his arms. "Hey, put me down." Everyone would stare, but he seemed deaf to her. A year later, the hospital room was filled with warm light as Wang cradled her newborn daughter in her arms. Her heart swelled with love as she watched 𝐁𝐫𝐿 and Zeke argue over the baby girl's features for what felt like the 100th time. "Her nose is clearly like mine," Jacob declared, pointing at the baby with a proud grin. Zeke scoffed. "You're delusional, look at her eyes, those are definitely like mine. She's the exact replica of me," Wang chuckled softly, shaking her head at their antics. Her mother and mother-in-law, standing nearby, exchanged amused but exhausted glances. "We have had enough of this nonsense." Mrs. John sighed dramatically. "You two have been at it for an hour. We are going to have some tea before we lose our mind." Her mom nodded in agreement. "Good luck handling them." Wine smiled and waved them off. "I'll survive." Not long after, the nurse arrived to take the baby for the final checkup. Zeke immediately followed, mumbling about making sure they didn't mix up the babies. Left alone with Jungkook, Wine leaned back on the bed, her tired yet glowing face turning to her husband. He crossed the room, sitting beside her on the edge of the bed. Finally, some peace and quiet. Wine rolled her eyes as her fingers moved to the top button of his shirt. "You'll die in my hands if you keep this open again." She began fastening the buttons, her delicate touch brushing against his chest. "That nurse was staring at your chest," she said with disdain. Jung smiled and leaned closer. "Then should I call her again and show her how my furious wife can be? She's eager to undress me even in the hospital." Wine still, her cheeks flushed. She slapped his chest. "Jungkook, that was hard." She rolled her eyes. His hand moved to his neck where a faint mark from her teeth lingered. "By the way, you have left your mark here. Should I be concerned? You have turned into a vampire." He teased, Wine ground, hiding her face in her hands. "I have already apologized. My mood swings were horrible those months. And I loved every second of it." He teased, his voice dropping to a softer tone. "Even when you threatened to throw my gym equipment out the window because I was 5 minutes late with your ice cream." She covered her face with her hands, utterly mortified. "I was hormonal. Don't remind me." Jungkook laughed, pulling her hands away gently. "You are adorable, and now you have given me the most perfect baby girl." His gaze softened as he looked at her, his hand reaching out to take a strand of hair behind her ear. "Thank you, Wine." She smiled, her heart fluttering at the sincerity in his voice. "You're welcome, but if she's so perfect, does that mean I'm being replaced?" His eyes widened and he leaned closer, cupping her face in his hands. "Replaced?" He kissed her forehead softly. "Never." His lips trailed to her temple, then her cheek, planting Gentle kisses that made her heart race. You're irreplaceable mine. My first love, my wife, the mother of my child. Nothing and no one could ever take your place. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she masked it with a teasing smile. You're just saying that to keep my heart. He chuckled his lips, finding her in his low, tender kiss. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against hers, his voice a soft whisper. I mean it, Wine. You're my everything. She sighed contentedly, leaning into his embrace. I know, Jungkook, and you're mine too. They stayed like that, wrapped in each other's warmth.